The complete works of Swami Vivekananda, Jnana Yoga, Chapter 2, The Ideal Self of Man, Part 2. We will now take the present theme. What is the force which is now working through us? We know how in old times, in all the ancient scriptures, this power, this manifestation of power, was thought to be a bright substance having the form of this body and which remained even after this body fell. Later on, however, we find a higher idea coming that this bright body did not represent the force. Whatsoever has form must be the result of combinations of particles and requires something else behind it to move it. If this body requires something which is not the body to manipulate it, the bright body by the same necessity will also require something other than itself to manipulate it. So that something was called the soul, the Atman in Sanskrit. It was the Atman which through the bright body as it were, worked on the gross body outside. The bright body is considered as a receptacle of the mind, and the Atman is beyond that. It is not the mind even, it works the mind, and through the mind the body. You have an Atman, I have another. Each one of us has a separate Atman and a separate fine body, and through that we work on the gross external body. Questions were then asked about this Atman, about its nature. What is this Atman? This soul of man which is neither the body nor the mind. Great discussions followed. Speculations were made. Various shades of philosophic inquiry came into existence. And I shall try to place before you some of the conclusions that have been reached about this Atman. The different philosophies seem to agree that this Atman, whatever it be, has neither form nor shape, and that which has neither form nor shape must be omnipresent. Time begins with mind, and space also is in the mind. Causation cannot stand without time. Without the idea of succession, there cannot be any idea of causation. Time, space, and causation therefore are in the mind. And as this Atman is beyond the mind and formlessness, it must be beyond time, beyond space, and beyond causation. Now, if it is beyond time, space, and causation, it must be infinite. Then comes the highest speculation in our philosophy. The infinite cannot be two. If the soul be infinite, there can be only one soul. And all ideas of various souls, you having one soul and I having another and so forth, are not real. The real man therefore is one and infinite, the omnipresent spirit. And the apparent man is only a limitation of the real man. In that sense, the mythologies are true that the apparent man, however great he may be, is only a dim reflection of the real man who is beyond. The real man, the spirit, being beyond cause and effect, not bound by time and space, must therefore be free. He was never bound and could never be bound. The apparent man, the reflection, is limited by time, space, and causation, and therefore is bound. Or in the language of some of our philosophers, he appears to be bound, but really is not. This is the reality in our souls. The omnipresence, this spiritual nature, this infinity. Every soul is infinite. Therefore, there is no question of birth and death. Some children were being examined. The examiner put them rather hard questions, and among them was this one: why does not the earth fall? He wanted to evoke answers about gravitation. Most of the children could not answer at all. A few answered that it was gravitation or something. One bright little girl answered it by putting another question: where should it fall? The question is nonsense. Where should the earth fall? There is no falling or rising for the earth. In infinite space, there is no up or down. That is only in the relative. Where is it going or coming for the infinite? Whence should it come and whither should it go? Thus, when people cease to think of the past or future, when they give up the idea of the body, because the body comes and goes and is limited, then they have risen to a higher ideal. The body is the real, not the real man. Neither is the mind. For the mind waxes and wanes. It is the spirit beyond, which alone can live forever. The body and mind are continually changing and are in fact only names of series of changing phenomena, like rivers whose waters are in a constant state of flux, yet presenting the appearance of unbroken streams. Every particle in this body is continually changing. No one has the same body for many minutes together, and yet we think of it as the same body. So with the mind, one moment it is happy, another moment unhappy, one moment strong, another weak, an ever-changing whirlpool. That cannot be the spirit which is infinite. Change can only be in the limited. To say that the infinite changes in any way is absurd. It cannot be. You can move and I can move as limited bodies. Every particle in this universe is in a constant state of flux. But taking the universe as a unit, as one whole, it cannot move, it cannot change. Motion is always a relative thing. I move in relation to something else. Any particle in this universe can change in relation to any other particle. But take the whole universe as one, and in relation to what can it move? There is nothing besides it. So this infinite unit is unchangeable, immovable, absolute, and this is the real man. Our reality therefore consists in the universal and not in the limited. These are old delusions, however comfortable they may be, to think that we are limited beings, constantly changing. People are frightened when they are told that they are universal being, everywhere present, through everything you work, through every foot you move, through every lip you talk, through every heart you feel. People are frightened when they are told this. They will again and again ask you if they are not going to keep their individuality. What is individuality? I should like to see it. A baby has no mustache when he grows to be a man. Perhaps he has a mustache and beard. His individuality would be lost if it were in the body. If I lose one eye, if I lose one of my hands, my individuality would be lost if it were in the body. Then a drunkard should not give up drinking because he would lose his individuality. A thief should not be a good man because he would thereby lose his individuality. No man ought to change his habits for fear of this. There is no individuality except in the infinite. That is the only condition which does not change. everything else is in a constant state of flux. Neither can individuality be in memory. Suppose, on account of a blow on the head, I forget all about my past. Then I have lost all individuality. I am gone. I do not remember 2 or 3 years of my childhood. And if memory and existence are one, then whatever I forget is gone. That part of my life which I do not remember, I did not live. That is a very narrow idea of individuality. We are not individuals yet. We are struggling towards individuality, and that is the infinite. That is the real nature of man. He alone lives whose life is in the whole universe. And the more we concentrate our lives on limited things, the faster we go towards death. Those moments alone we live when our lives are in the universe, in others, and living this little life is death, simply death. And that is why the fear of death comes. The fear of death can only be conquered when a man realizes that so long as there is one life in this universe, he is living. When he can say, I am in everything, in everybody, I am in all lives, I am the universe, then alone comes a state of fearlessness. To talk of immortality in constant change in things is absurd. Says an old Sanskrit philosopher, it is only the spirit that is the individual, because it is infinite. No infinity can be divided. Infinity cannot be broken into pieces. It is the same undivided unit forever. And this is the individual man, the real man. The apparent man is merely a struggle to express, to manifest this individuality which is beyond. And evolution is not in the spirit. These changes which are going on, the wicked becoming good, the animal becoming man, take them in whatever way you like, are not the spirit. They are evolution of nature and manifestation of spirit. Suppose there is a screen hiding you from me, in which there is a small hole through which I can see some of the faces before me. Just a few faces. Now suppose the hole begins to grow larger and larger, and as it does, more and more of the scene before me reveals itself, and when at last the whole screen has disappeared, I stand face to face with you all. You did not change at all in this case. It was the whole that was evolving, and you were gradually manifesting yourself. So it is with the spirit. No perfection is going to be attained. You are already free and perfect. What are these ideas of religion and God and searching for the hereafter? Why does man look for a God? Why does man in every nation, in every state of society, want a perfect ideal somewhere, either in man, in God, or elsewhere? Because that idea is within you. It is in your own heart beating, and you did not know. You are mistaking it for something external. It is the God within your own self that is propelling you to seek for Him, to realize Him. After the long searches here and there, in temples and in churches, in earths and in heavens, at last you have come back, completing the circle from where you started to your own soul. And you find that He for whom you are seeking all over the world, for whom you have been weeping and praying in the churches and the temples, on whom you are looking as the mystery of all mysteries, shrouded in the clouds, is nearest of the near. He is your own self, the reality of your life, body and soul. That is your own nature. assert it, manifest it. Not to become pure, you are pure already. You are not to be perfect, you are that already. Nature is that screen which is hiding the reality beyond. Every good thought that you think or act is simply tearing the wheel, as it were, and the purity, the infinity, the God behind manifests itself more and more.